Electricast.
Hello and welcome to Abracadabra, Create What You Speak. I'm iLan Azoulai, your host, a spiritual mentor and a sound therapist. This is an empowerment program with guests from all over the world who will share their light and their gifts of art, knowledge and wisdom to inspire you to be the best version of yourself. Hello, welcome to Abracadabra. I'm iLan Azoulai. Thank you so much for being here. This is an empowerment program where I bring people from all walks of life to encourage and to empower you to remember yourself and to reclaim yourself and to remember your gifts and to manifest the life that you desire. And the guests here are here to encourage you to voice their gifts, and manifestation starts with imagination. And it is all about our relationship to ourselves. My guest is a wonderful colleague I've met at a workshop. As a relationship expert, Dr. Heather Browne has worked with thousands of individuals and couples in psychotherapy. She is published in hundreds of journals, has an active YouTube channel, and has been featured on ABC 7 News, was the relationship expert on KDOC Daybreak OC, and is published in Inc., Toronto Sun, Thriving Family Magazine, Light Plus, Live, Brain, Scary Mommy, and Psychology Today. And there are more. She is a regular guest blogger for both Links for Shrinks and for Marriage-Friendly Therapists. She has 2 books in final stages of pre-publication and a TEDx speaker coming up September 23rd, and you want to listen to that and to mark your calendar. She offers weekly newsletter packed with tips and techniques to improve relationships and has monthly workshops. She's wonderful. She has great advice, and let's bring in Dr. Heather Browne. Hello, Heather. How are you?
I am fine.
Thank you
What
for
an
being
intro.
here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. You know, this is a great experience. We've met at an empowerment workshop, actually, right?
Mhm.
And since then, I've seen how things have shifted. You start using different platforms, media platform. Was it difficult for you to? Was it challenging, or was it too difficult to engage into this new world technology, and rather than the traditional concept of face-to-face?
No, it's actually pretty seamless. My background is theater, and then because I do work so much in my office, one-on-one, and we've been Zooming now for several years. Not so much. It's more so the tech aspect of understanding tech that has been a little bit more challenging in putting things together, but showing up and speaking with people and connecting, that's my love. So it's just
Yeah,
been a lovely way to do it in different formats.
I see. Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, we're adaptable species.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, the focus that you put in, and how you the advice that you give is really eventually all surrounding around relationships, right? Relationships, and this is what your specialty is. And so what I've learned about over the year, it takes a lifetime, right? Is that it is not necessarily all the time about the individual points. Let's say you, me, another person, but it is what I refer to as relational field, as the field between all of us, what we bring into. Because when we are alone, when we live alone in an apartment or in a house, nobody is around us. Everything is hunky-dory. Everything is fine. There is no, we don't argue with anybody. We don't have disagreements. I mean, unless you're like me, where you have 13 of us, so we always argue. But basically, it comes into play when we are connecting with others, when we come with others. So what is happening is this field in between us that is really, it's like the Venn diagram, the 2 circles. It's what's in between, what we're co-creating, and that requires different levels of intimacy. So, with the people that you work, how do you? First of all, what is intimacy for you?
Mm. Intimacy would be the ability to share all of who you are at any given moment and be willing to explore that with another and how it impacts them and how they impact you.
Hmm.
It's the usness in a moment, which changes at every single moment, depending upon what we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're offering, what we're creating together in that moment. So, truly finding the moment together in a way that is supportive and nurturing to me would be intimacy.
Hmm. So there is also, so the intimacy is the, so we are actually, whether it's communication, how we communicate, and that's an aspect. But isn't it also what place we inhabit within ourselves when we are sharing? Because we can be in a place of expansiveness, or we can be in a place of contraction, of feeling all kind of, maybe self-esteem or self-worth, and then the intimacy quality changes. So what would you work first on the person, on how they see themselves, so they can be in a healthy intimacy?
It would
Or
depend upon what they come to me for. If they're coming to me within a relationship, then no, then we're going to be working on it in the relationship. If they come to me individually, then yes, we'll do that. And
mm,
you don't always need to do one before the other. I think it's probably the wisest to really have done your self work before you step into a relationship,
mm,
because then I think you have so much more to offer. But yet, whenever you step into a relationship, you're going to find what it is you need to find. And part of that will be your internal intimacy, and part of that will be your intimacy with another. So, whether you're brand new to relationship with yourself or with others, you're going to find that which you need to find. I think the challenge is recognizing that and not fighting that or being angry and upset with that, but really looking at that and questioning, why am I having these thoughts? Why am I having these feelings? Why am I reacting in this way? Or what's
mm,
going on inside of you? And to walk through that as best you can together.
mm. Yeah. So self in so s- working so somebody comes to you about a relationship, all right? They have an issue, they have issues between one another, and you notice that, the reason I ask this is because you notice, as they come to you about relationship, you notice that, it's not really about the relationship, it's about how this person sees themselves. So now, like you said, if well, you said if they don't come to me about working about themselves, and I'm working about the relationship. But how do you navigate when you notice, and you see it as just like the sun is in the middle of the day, right? You see it clearly that it's about this person's way of looking at things, the places that he or she inhabits within themselves. Do you deviate to that? Do you suggest? I mean, how do you deal with this?
It happens all the time. What I would say, gosh, I didn't hear him say that in his response. What I heard him say was, da 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 da. I wonder how that thought that you expressed came into play. Or, gosh, that's a really strong feeling that you're having right now. Can you share with us more of that
Mm,
so we can understand what your experience is?
mm,
So it happens all the time. And so there's the clarity of trying to help them see, is it a belief that they have? Is it a misunderstanding of an interpretation? Is it something that is actually being said? There's places to explore all of that and to try to help them find what their individual truth is, and then question if that truth is accurate or if it needs to still stay. Triggers are something that's really talked about a lot now. And people will say, you triggered me, which is not accurate. No one triggers anybody else. You
You
say
don't think
something.
so?
No,
Oh,
you say
interesting.
you say something, you do something, and inside I am triggered. You haven't
Yes.
done something that triggers me. I have
Yeah.
a challenge with something, and that
Yes.
gets triggered. It's like
Yes.
rubbing against sandpaper. And so when we say you've triggered me, we now make the other person responsible to stop doing that behavior, that thought, that action to take care of you.
So I can
So
say I was.
me,
So I can say I was triggered.
absolutely.
I
Like,
can
oh,
say I
I
was
felt triggered
triggered.
just now. And then there's the place of, okay, so the trigger is trying to show me I don't feel safe here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel comfortable here. This feels like something that I remember from before. Let me take care of me to make certain this is different. Or if it's not, how I want to respond to this differently than I did before. But any challenge we have is within us. And we try to make it the other person's fault. But it's a whole it's harder in a lot of ways to take full responsibility, but in the bigger picture it's so much wiser because then you can decide what you do with it, and it might be to step out of the relationship,
Yeah.
but as long as you make somebody else responsible for your success, you're in trouble. So if
But
I feel triggered
yeah.
by something, I got to look at what went on. How does this remind me of my childhood or my last partner? What's going on that I am now making you somehow tied with them? You haven't done that. You've just
Mm-hmm.
been you. And I don't like this aspect of you because it reminds me of my ex. But the person you're with hasn't done anything to trigger you.
No, you see, I don't see that when I say you've triggered me. I don't see it as putting the blame on me personally. I don't see it as putting the blame on me, but you've been the catalyst to evoke. It doesn't mean that anything is your fault. It doesn't mean that it is your responsibility. But there is here something that I was triggered. Otherwise, I wouldn't say that I was triggered. I have a part of a workshop that I work on is a segment or that I work with people is a segment called trigger time, true time, where trigger time is the time that I've been triggered. And this is about self-work. It's not about correcting somebody else or any of that thing. It's about from the moment that I've been triggered until the moment I realized that I was triggered, which is true time. So you can trigger me and I go all day with all my in a way these thoughts and stories in the head and making stories in the head and blaming somebody else. It's kind of there is some comfort in that in this suffering in this illusion of suffering. Uh, but until the moment that I realize that I got triggered, I'm in a movie, and it's not mine, and it's not mine. So the more we realize that, aware of that, first of all, be aware that there is a shift in my place, in the place I feel like I triggered. I see somebody that I had something with, and I'm all boiling up. Oh, what am I going to say? Oh, he's looking at me. All these kind of things. Until I realize that I was triggered, which is kind of deflating the balloon. So all this time is a movie that is not mine. And the more I realize it, the more I'm aware of it and conscious of it, that time shrinks. So maybe in the beginning it was 2 days. Maybe it was a day, maybe it was a week. But the more I'm realizing that, then it shrinks until a moment where I can actually realize it live as it happens. As it happens, where somebody said something, oh, well. Like the best example is road rage, right? When somebody cuts me off, one time I was in Israel and somebody was slow and I passed him and went a little front and came back. So the guy behind me got upset, raced to me, rolled the world the wheel, looking at him, and he starts yelling at me, "Are you tired of living?" you know,
Wow.
that kind of thing. So I realized I rolled the window and continued. It is not about me. For that person, I'm only a variable.
Mhm.
It is not. So if I get triggered like that guy got triggered, I was triggered by this thing. And road rage usually doesn't go away until it explodes. So it's that moment that the more we're realizing that, more we can come to real time actually realizing that, oh, well, hold on, I'm being triggered. And that is that's something that just when you said that, it just triggered me to remember.
Well, I think it's if you take the power within yourself. And
Yeah,
so yes, I mean, I would hope that time between being triggered and realizing you're triggered is short, because the power is in realizing you are in a story that isn't necessarily true, some probably not positive fantasy you're in,
that's right.
and then what to do with it now. But it's very important to realize that work is up to you.
That's
I
right.
do think a lot of people do use triggers as a way to say, you shouldn't do this because I've gone through this. You shouldn't do this. And we think we're asking them to help us, but we're actually losing our own personal power by saying, you've got to be safer for me, instead of saying, I will keep myself safe.
Yeah, you mentioned in one of your publications that we should eliminate the word should, and it is
Mhm.
very true. It's very true. I don't remember the name exactly, but eliminate. Oh, it's about relationship, rekindling relationships. Uh, uh, should, because should is an expectation based on my wants.
Right.
You should change so I can feel that I can approve, right? You should do this so I can approve. And many times we grow up in this kind of environment where we're coming to our parents. I mean, our parents, our family, our society. Oh, you should do this. You shouldn't do this. You should do this. You should do this. We're kind of similar generation where back in the 80s, 70s, there wasn't this awareness and mindfulness. And so it's just make sure that the door doesn't hit you on the way out, when you leave the class, those kind of things. So,
Don't end up in
so
jail was what it was common when I was a kid. Just don't end up in jail.
just don't have,
Like
okay, well, so where did you grow up?
in
Where did,
LA. Yeah, I'm almost 60. And so the viewpoint was very much kind of hands off. Like, we've given you the basics, you just take care of yourself and you'll be okay.
hmm,
But on the other side, there were a lot of, you're to be polite, you're not to be selfish, you know, seen and not heard. There was still a lot of that. Girls are to be nice. There was a lot of telling you who you were to be and how you were to be. And for some people, they fit that very well. And for some of us, not so much. Some of us have a little bit of a rebel spirit. And
yeah,
we really wanted to define our own rules for ourselves. And I think that's a big part of the challenge we have in this world, is that we want other people to be like us and accept us as we are, because it's easier for us.
yeah,
But the
that's
point of
true.
the world is for it not to be easy. The point of the world is for us to learn to work together and also to work alone.
Hmm,
So we need to be different. And those places that are not smooth are the places where we learn the most.
that's right. Just like with
So,
the people that we don't get along with the
exactly.
most,
They're our best teachers.
our best teachers, right?
It's
Yeah,
painful.
fascinating. Wow, fascinating. Um, so tell us a little bit about you. Where you I mean, you didn't get up one day and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a therapist," or maybe you
No,
did.
not at all. So I have a kind of a different story than a lot of people. I grew up with a mom who was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so she lived a good amount of the time in a reality that I didn't know where she was.
Hmm.
And it took me a while to realize that was what was going on. But once I did, I started to realize that this is not what other people lived through. But I'm not going to even say being raised, growing up in that gave me
Hmm.
an awareness that everyone has their own reality and
Hmm.
they don't line up a lot of times. And my focus became not to try to prove mine or make certain that everybody else felt mine and mine was right. My focus came to be, how do you try to understand what other people's are around you? And how do you try to bridge that to be able to coexist? Um, she killed herself when I was 16, which threw our whole family into just a
Hmm.
whole nother level of uproar.
Hmm.
And I became a therapist through that experience of needing to go to therapy for me. to help myself just deal with all that had gone on. And then really very quickly fell in love with the process, fell in love with helping people find who they are and who they want to be and how to reparent themselves. And so that's where
I see.
therapy raised its head.
Hmm. Did you feel in any time, maybe before you discovered that she's schizophrenic or after, did you feel any time any guilt, anything that had to do with you that was?
There was one time that it's in my book, and it's one of my biggest takeaways for clients. It was shortly before she killed herself. I don't know if this incident added to it or not. I know it didn't help. But when I grew up, there weren't cell phones, there weren't answering machines. You just had a telephone and you'd
Hmm.
call from a payphone and it would just ring and ring and ring and ring.
That's right.
So my mom couldn't work because of her mental situation. And so she was home. And it was a day where it was pouring rain and she didn't come to pick me up. And it was wet, it was cold. She was 3 hours late. My books were wet. I was getting really, really mad. And I had called probably 100 times and she never picked up. She finally pulled up. I opened up the station wagon and I just let loose on her, which is not something I ever did to my mom before. It's not something I ever suggest anybody ever do ever,
Mm.
especially not to someone who's a paranoid schizophrenic. But I just started screaming, "Where are you? You don't love me. I'm going to fail my task." Just vomiting all my putrid rage all over her, kind of like road rage, but we were stopped.
Mhm.
And she looked at me with eyes that truly looked like they wanted to kill me. And she said, "I just stopped my best friend from trying to kill herself."
Mm.
And I just went, and of
Mm.
course, I tried to apologize and
Mm.
she wouldn't have it. We drove home in silence. She would not talk to me. She would not talk to me that night. We never talked about it again. She refused to talk about it.
Mm.
If I had opened the car door and simply said, "What happened?"
Mhm.
she would have shared it with me.
Mm.
I would have loved on her and I would have been a comfort. And she would have apologized for being 3 hours late. But I learned a very, very important lesson, which
Yeah,
is if you don't know what has happened, do not assume that you do. I call it the pause. And I
that's
just
right.
tell people just pause for a second, ask the question, and wait for the response. Most times, there's going to be a valid reason, or at least the person thinks it's a valid reason.
Yeah,
But you can't take your rage back.
that's
And
right.
I
That's right.
I made probably one of the worst nights of my mom's life a whole lot worse.
Mm.
And it didn't get my book dry and it
Hmm.
didn't take away those 3 hours. So what I did was basically just make the night awful. That's one moment that I will say I wish I had known. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. You know, I was 16, I was a kid. I was frustrated, but I did not handle it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when do you find yourself? I mean, you kind of, in a way, beat up yourself, about that. I mean, you recognize that it is a great lesson that you've got, but I can only imagine that you've never spoken about this again, and it's probably, for a while been eating you up.
Well, she
You
killed
know.
herself shortly thereafter, so there wasn't
Um,
there wasn't room to. I mean, I've talked about it my whole life, so I've talked about it a lot, but I can't resolve it with her. But she
that's right.
wasn't mentally in a state toward the end of her life to resolve things much either. I tried. I
Yeah,
100% tried
that's the thing.
numerous times,
It's
but she refused.
yeah, yeah. And so that's really, especially for us who still have some parents alive, is to resolve everything um,
I would hope so. I would
before.
hope
Yeah,
because we think it does us good, but it doesn't. It doesn't do us any good to harbor resentment. And
no, not at all.
even if you're going to decide you're not going to be in my life, do it in the way where you release that anger and that hatred. It doesn't do you any good to stay in rigidity and anger and resentment. If you feel like I can't have you in my life, then come to the place where you really give yourself that truth. Like, I needed to do that for me, and that's okay for me to do. And maybe they don't like that, but I've needed to take care of myself. And then, whew, and then let yourself be cleared of it as much as possible. But the reason our country is so angry is we don't do that. We just stay mad and we keep talking about it and
Well, I mean,
trying to
this
shame the other person.
this is one of the reasons, but there are external forces that are affecting successfully many people this time. The fear tactics and all that is affecting people, and putting people in creating the environment for people to continue and cultivate fear and anger. It is this is a
It's
common thing.
very well being orchestrated right now.
Always, to be
Very
honest with you.
well.
To be
And
honest with you, always.
COVID just made it so much more clear how much of a very, in my opinion, sick, odd game this all is. Yeah,
It depends who you ask, right?
completely,
Depends who you ask. It's totally,
completely.
my whole thing about this, that the whole COVID and everything before was just to get to the process of entering into our body, into our system. Everything was a wag the dog type of film. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But it's very common that we look at the past and we judge ourselves, right? We judge ourselves about the past, forgetting that the reason we judge our past, the reason we judge 10, 15, 20 years ago for what happened, what we did, the reason for that is because now we have the tools to see and identify what was not healthy. But back at that time, we were immersed in our emotions. Our emotions were covering our eyes. We couldn't see further than our nose size, so to speak, and we operated there. So when we're talking about forgiveness and forgiveness to ourselves, is really to see that back at that time, these are the eyes that I had.
I wrote a piece because people were having a lot of challenges with hindsight. And I said, well, what if we call it kind sight?
Oh, nice.
Because hindsight's, of course, when if I went through that red light, I was going to slam into that car, of course you wouldn't do it. But we really do the best that we know how to do with where we are.
Exactly.
Is it going to always go well? No, but we do the best we can. And if you pull back and think, well, how often am I in crisis with the choices that I make? Truly, hardly ever. Hardly ever. We do so much well. It's pretty astounding. But are there some moments where we blow it? Yeah. But we've done the best we could. And so therefore there must be some knowledge we need to have out of realizing, oh no, this could go wrong. Well, now I know that. I've learned what I've needed to learn, and let me move from that with that knowledge. That's a really healthy way to do it. But if we didn't have challenges, we would never grow. We would
that's true.
Stay the same all the time. And that'd be a pretty boring life, but it also wouldn't benefit us. I mean, I think people really we like to overcome. I think it's very much a big part of our ego. Like, what can I do?
It's also part of
how amazing can I become?
It's part of our survival too. It's part of a survival mechanism to overcome.
Absolutely. The fight and flight. Yeah. So this is just part of that. And so if you realize I probably have a really long life. Why? Because there's probably a lot that I need to integrate and understand. What I'll tell people that come to me is, especially people who are dealing with depression, I'll say, instead of thinking like, today I start my day down here, what I want you to do is just wherever you start your day is your neutral. So if it is a day that feels super high, that's still your neutral. If it's a day that feels really low, that's still your neutral for today. Because if you start the day feeling like you're way down here, it's really hard to begin. So if you make, okay, I woke up today and I'm a 2. Okay, so Cool. So I'm going to make that, this is a 5. This is where I am. Let's try to keep it up because I want to stay up as much as possible. But it lessens some of the judgment. It lessens some of the criticism we have upon ourselves simply based upon how we feel when we wake up in the morning. And then it turns into, well, what can I do? It also takes you out of that comparative mode of, oh my gosh, I'm so much worse than I was yesterday. That thought is not going to help you.
That's right. It's going to perpetuate, you
Right.
know.
Right.
I like to say that we are like we are like TV boxes, like televisions, and we have 20 channels. And today, when I'm going to broadcast sports, who's going to come? Sports people. Tomorrow, I'm going to broadcast documentary. Tomorrow, I'm going to make a documentary. So it's not only how I feel, but how I feel is also what I bring in, right?
Absolutely.
It's how do we manifest and what we bring in, and so this is going really to a continuous growth of. I see it as growth of authenticity because I see authenticity as dynamic. When we say be authentic to yourself today, tomorrow you're
In
going to
this
be different
moment,
authentic.
just even in this moment,
Yeah,
because
but
I haven't done Heather in 30 seconds yet. So I don't even know what that is. We really
exactly.
are
So
writing our story as we write it.
exactly. So when people say, "Oh, you know, you connect to yourself, connect to your authentic self," I have a hard time with that because the authentic self is always changing. It's like trying to
It is.
catch the moment. It's like, wait, here's the moment, but it's gone, right? So the authentic is always changing. So being in this place of recognizing where I am at this moment goes together with what you said about let's just look at today. Let's just look at now. Let's not worry about tomorrow because tomorrow never happened yet. Although what will be already happened, but tomorrow never happened, right? So it is very no, this is very this goal. This is great. Is to look at today and to say, okay, I am here today. Let's
And
see
what am
what.
I aware of? What am I
Yeah.
feeling? What am I experiencing? What's the intentions that I want to have for today?
Hmm.
Those all make up how your day is going to go. And then I think it's very important at any moment that you feel you're blowing it to tell yourself, oh, like let's start over. I homeschooled my kids for many years and um sometimes just sometimes they just would be a little bit difficult. And so when they were, I'd say, oh, I know what we need. We need a start over morning. And I'd run to my bed with them. We'd throw the comfort over our head and I'd go, and then I'd throw the comfort off and I'd say, good morning. I love you. And they'd laugh and laugh and laugh. And then we'd have a reboot of the day. But you can have a reboot at any point. You say something you wish you hadn't said, you can say, oh, I didn't say that correctly. Let me do that differently. Or you start to do something that you know really doesn't best serve you. You can stop and say, oh, I'm so glad I caught myself in that. Let me do this because this serves me better. We
Hmm.
get to choose in every moment who we are.
That's right.
So there's the truth of you have the opportunity to decide for yourself what you're going to experience today. And if you are feeling sad, if you are feeling blue, a lot of us will stay there and let ourselves stay there and know we're staying there. And
Hmm.
that's okay because it's your choice. But it's important to realize you do have a choice to what you focus on. Doesn't mean you can say, I'm going to focus on being happy and you're going to be elated. But you can always move to, well, what's a little bit better of a focus than what I'm focusing on right now? If I'm focusing on the person screaming at me in the other car because he feels I cut him off, I can focus on that. Or I can focus on, thank God they pulled away and they're no longer by me. Or I can
Hmm.
focus on, thank God I wasn't hit. Or I can
Hmm.
focus on, I'm so glad I don't respond to people in that way. There's always a thought that's a little bit of a cleaner, healthier, higher vibration that you can move to. And when you do that, you allow yourself to move up bit by bit by bit by bit. And
Yes.
in doing so, it lets you realize you do have control. You do have some choice, which is paramount.
Yes. 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 Yeah, this is great. One of the tools that to support what you're saying, one of the tools that I give, because I work on manifestation and power of the words, is really the words that we say and to utter the words out so we can hear it back.
Mm.
Speaking it is the, if we, people who speak in terms of masculine and feminine, speaking it is the masculine and hearing it back is the feminine. So we're creating a circle, and the intention behind the words are the fuel to the words.
That's beautiful.
You
That
know,
is
it's like,
beautiful expressing it like that.
thank you. Yeah, but we are, it's coming from one another as we're having this conversation. I like to speak a lot in analogies. So, for example, you look at a car and a driver. The car is the word, the driver is the intention. Just like the car is the body and the driver is the soul. You can pimp the car till tomorrow, but without driver, without a soul, without the intention that fuels the word, I ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, so it's and there are sentences to say that, and you know, sometimes we don't feel like saying, oh, I'm grateful and happy now for the abundance is coming. But you know what? You keep saying it and you start believing it, because we're creating a vibrating effect. We're creating a ripple effect
Well, you
where
can
we're
ask
starting to say
yourself the
that.
opposite of that. I don't feel like being appreciative. I don't feel like being grateful. Okay, so what do I feel like? I feel like feeling crappy. I feel like feeling like, I don't get anything. I feel like feeling jealous. And when you say that out loud, you're gonna be like, no, no, I really don't. Okay, so how about I'm a little bit grateful? How about I'm a little bit thankful? I heard a story that I loved, and it was about a woman who went to see a therapist, and she'd had a
Hmm.
dog that she just adored, and the dog had recently died, 15 years, and the woman was devastated. And so she met with a therapist, and she said, I'm never going to love like that again. I'm never going to have another dog. And
Mm.
the therapist said to the woman, okay, help me understand this. This was the love of your life. And she said, yes. She said, so you felt completely in love for 15 years. And she said,
Mm.
yes. She said, and the reason you're devastated now is because that dog is gone. And she said, yes. And she said, so you would rather live the next 15 years not feeling love than to go get another dog and feel not the same love, but love for 15 years. And then at the end of 15 years, feel this hurt once again. And the woman said, I think I need to get a dog. But there's the place
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
why would we choose to stay in a place that really doesn't benefit us? And we do that at times. I mean, we are very self-destructive at times and self-sabotage, but there's a place to look at it. I'll go into self-pity for a couple of seconds, and then I'll say,
yeah.
you're just feeling sorry for yourself. Like, do you really want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, go ahead. Feel sorry for yourself then. And then I don't. So call yourself on your little shenanigans, because oftentimes you then move into that higher part of you, your inner being, that says, well, I don't
That's
feel
true.
this way. I want to
That's
feel
true.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. So the power, again, the power of the words, right? The power
Yeah.
of how we're saying. You know, Abracadabra, the program. Do you know where it comes from? It comes from Aramaic. It's in Aramaic, and it says literally, "Abracadabra," I create as I speak.
Mm,
Because the power
beautiful.
of the word in Judaism and Kabbalah was always the the world was created in 10 utterances, right?
Mhm.
So it's always the power, it's always, that is the difference also between us as creation of humans versus the animal kingdom, because we're above the animal kingdom, but the only difference is that we have the power of speech, and we are the only species that can decide to change our fate, right? We can
Mm.
decide to change that by the power of our word. a, a
And
chicken
our
is not,
faith. We can change
and
our
our
faith
faith, and our
too,
faith,
which is pretty powerful.
and our faith. A chicken is going to get up in the morning, is not going to say, okay, today I'm going to be a wolf.
Yeah.
Today I'm going to overcome my chickenness, right? It's not going to happen, right? But we can say, you know what, yesterday I did this, today I'm doing this.
Mhm.
I don't want to be there anymore. This is where I want to be.
Right.
So I'm going to say how I feel. And yeah, this is Now you mentioned to me earlier that your husband passed away
Mhm.
as well. And how did that take you into a spiral of some sort? I mean, it's natural because we're losing somebody we live with and we are with. How did that affect you, and how did that empower you maybe to bring more to what you're doing?
It was a tough time. It wasn't expected. And my kids were 14 and 17, and we were completely not prepared
Hmm.
in any way. He was 51. He had just turned 51. So it was sudden. It was a shock. Um, it,
I'm
it,
sorry to. I'm sorry
it was,
that's.
it was a crazy year.
Hmm.
And getting them through was most important. The part that for me was just like, come on now. People said to me, you know, for anybody, you're the best person for this. And I'm like, dear God, what a horrible thing to
What?
say. And what they said was, well, you're a therapist. So, and you've lost your mom. And I'm like, okay, so number one, why do I have to lose my husband? But let's go super big. Why do my kids have to live through what I lived through? Like, how crazy is that? But we bonded together really tightly. We became the three Brown Sketeers and really loved on each other, really held each other in our darkness because there was a lot. There was a lot of darkness. There was a lot of
Hmm.
anger. There was a lot of hurt. There felt like a lot of betrayal, a lot of letdowns. And so we just loved on each other through that. I was already very close with my kids, but we certainly became a lot closer.
Hmm.
And um, the part that was the hardest for me was letting out my grief because I didn't want to do that in front of my kids to the extent that I was feeling it because they were going through so much. So I would wail, which I had never done before, but I literally wailed from 3 to 6 in the morning in the
Hmm.
bathroom by myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I would just cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And one day I felt someone praying for me. It was at 4:15 in the morning. I literally felt it. And I stopped and I said, right now in this instance, someone who is praying for me, and whoever is, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Put a little post on Facebook and I said, whoever was praying for me at 4:15 this morning, it was received. And I felt it. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. One of my very dear friends responded and she said, it was me. And I said, you transformed me in that moment.
Hmm.
There was something incredibly powerful about being in the place that I could actually feel other people's prayers coming through.
Hmm.
Because before that, it had been, lip service to hear lovely, kind, thank you, thank you, thank you. But at that moment, I experienced it
You
and
felt
something
it, yes.
completely, and something really shifted. Um, Before that, I'd had two friends that were very angry with me for not calling them. And
Hmm.
they said, why won't you? And I said, I don't think you're going to quite understand this. It's not that I don't think you love me. I do. It's not that I don't think you want to be there for me. I know that. And I know it would feel really, really good. And then I have to hang up the phone. And then I am alone again. So I just have to figure this out.
Hmm.
And it was amazing how deeply I became connected with my spirituality. I have always been, but it was a whole nother layer to be able to say, like, this is all up to you. This this is
Hmm.
this is all up to you. Just keep me breathing and keep my heart beating, and I will do whatever it is that you need for me to get my kids through this. And one of the toughest moments was just a couple of nights in, we were sitting on the living room floor and I was looking at them. We're all sobbing. We're in blankets all around us sitting in the living room. And I remember looking at my kids and I said, this is the hardest experience I've ever had, in the fact
Hmm.
that there's nothing I can do. And they both said, what do you mean? And I said, for the first time in my entire life with you, I I can't take away your pain.
Hmm.
And it was so humbling and so
Hmm.
horrible, but it was so true. And I said, I can love you wonderfully. it's not going to take any of your pain away. And it
That's
was
true.
really good that I realized that, because then it allowed them to grieve as they needed to grieve, as deeply as they needed to. And it wasn't my role to stop it, to alter it. It was my role to love on them as much as possible in the ways that I could. But it was really hard to watch them in that kind of agony.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, this is. I hope this is for anybody who is watching, that to be inspiration and encouragement to take a step to the left or to the right from where you are. If standing right where you are is not working for you. Yeah.
There's always other steps to take. And
That's right. Forward and backwards. No.
this is just my truth. I hope it will be others. I feel that we are dearly and devotedly protected by the divine. I feel we are dearly and devotedly loved and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that horrible things aren't going to happen to us. Horrible things are going to happen, but we are never separate unless we decide we are. There is no way to separate us from love, because we were created out of love. So it's only our belief that we are, but we really never are separate from God or from the divine or from all that there is, unless we choose to believe that. And the more we embrace that, the more relieving that feels, and the more powerful that feels.
That's right. I say to everybody that I meet, let alone people I work with, that it's very it's important to understand that everything that happens in this realm, everything that happens in this physical where we are, has a spiritual reason and cause.
Yeah. Everything is spiritual.
There you go. Everything is therefore everything is a spiritual reason and cause, because
we are of spirit. That's why we're here. We're the breath and the emotions of God, the divine, what you will. We're the human expression of it, and how we choose to express ourselves as humans is our gift back. And sometimes it's not a very lovely gift, and sometimes it's absolutely glorious.
Yeah. It's a spirit that holds the matter.
Yes.
And therefore the matter can shape accordingly. So let's talk about, I want to talk about, you recently was invited to be a TEDx speaker that is coming up September 23rd, right?
I am.
That's a great day. It's my son's birthday, September 23rd. Well, thank you very much. So talk about anything that is coming up, and let's talk about how people can reach you. Everything will be written down underneath here, your details, and people can contact you. But maybe you can talk about what's coming up for you, and talk about the TEDx. And
sure,
yeah,
there's a lot. So I do monthly workshops, and that's just to reach people beyond what I do on my one-on-one. Obviously, I work one-on-one or with couples. I also coach with people who aren't in California if it's appropriate. I have just recently finished a book on couples communication, and we are moments away from sending it out to publishers to get it picked up. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I am about 3/4 done with co-authoring a book on anxiety, which we're going to self-publish. So that's exciting. It's bridging from the psychotherapist realm with a yogi and bringing them together, which I think is a blessed way of bringing in the different aspects of mind, emotion, body, and spirit. So we'll be bringing that out hopefully at the end of the year. I have my TEDx with Mount Rubidoux on September 23rd, and that's coming up as well. So lots of things.
That's great. That is really great. So happy for you. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this has been really a great time to have you. We could talk until tomorrow. But thank you very much for being here and for sharing. Can you last words for our listeners? How
Mm.
any words of encouragement, anything that comes for you, anything else that
Yeah.
comes to you to share.
Let yourself live in your bliss as much as possible. Let yourself find those spaces and those places that feel heavenly and warm and kind and compassionate and creative, and let yourself be in that place as much as possible, because from there comes our best inspiration,
Mhm.
and from there comes our best gloriousness.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Heather Browne. Thank you very much for being here. It's been really great and fast. And thank you, everyone who is here. My name is iLan Azoulai. This is Abracadabra. Create what you speak. Remember your gifts. Yeah. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Bless you.